It's time to lay down the law. Make sure that you remember this React rule: never directly modify state. More completely, never directly modify the component state if your intention is for changes to occur in the render method based on updated state values. Let's look at examples and determine whether or not they're following this rule. First up, we have this line of code. In this case, this.state.displayBio is getting set to a new value. Now, as far as JavaScript code goes, this syntax seems fine. In other non-React applications, this line of code could potentially be relevant. But in React, this is a bad practice. It's directly modifying a state. The way to properly do this is to call setState. Give setState an object, and then have the relevant key that you want to update, and then the value that it should update to when you call setState itself. All right, before we get into why the setState approach is required, let's take a look at another example. Take this line of code. It's attempting to update a text variable in the state object by adding 3 periods to the text key. Now, is this a bad example or recommended example of updating the state? And it's definitely bad. This is another example of directly modifying the state. Again, the code itself isn't bad JavaScript. This is a valid way to do string concatenation and add 3 periods to an existing string. But it's just not the way in React that you want to reflect changes in the render method. Instead, the proper approach again is to call setState, have the text key, and have the value be a whole new string with this.state.text and adding the 3 periods to it. Still, even with these examples, the main question still hasn't been answered. Why is it a rule to never directly modify the state? Why does it work when calling the setState method? The reason is that React recalls the render method after changes have been made to the state through the setState method. So setState is called, and the relevant values in the component state change. And once that's done, setState triggers the render method, calling it again. This is important because a render method that is returning different JSX based on the value of something in the state now has a chance to return something new. Based on the updated values in the state, it can control what should appear in the React app itself within the rendered method's JSX. But this doesn't work when the state is modified directly. It won't re-trigger the render and doesn't do anything beyond changing the values. Even though the values in the state object would be different, the render method won't notice this. Therefore, the application appearance won't update based on the logic in your render method. Okay, let's explore this rule further by looking at some code. Head back to the portfolio application, head to your toggle display bio method, and let's comment out the current valid setState call. And instead, we're going to do a direct modification of the state by setting a state value to a completely new value. So this.state.displayBio is going to be equal to a bang operator of not this.state.displayBio. All right, go ahead and save this. If you don't have the application running in the background already, fire npm run start on the command line in the portfolio app. So in the command line, fire npm run start. You'll also see that React app is equipped to give you a warning of not to modify state directly. But let's also look at the application in the browser and verify this ourselves and see what happens. And now that the toggle display bio method has been refactored, let's try to click the read more button, and this time nothing happens. If you open the console, you'll find that same warning that you shouldn't directly modify the state. So that's pretty helpful. So let's restore the method back to its valid form by putting back in that commented out line where we set the state of display bio to a completely new value that is the result of calling the bang operator on the current this.state.displayBio method. If you click read more and show less, now it should be working just as it did before. Cool. Now, overall, this relates to another slightly confusing aspect of React, and this has to do with how we set up the on-click handlers. One question you may have lingering is, why are we referring to only the method name itself within the on-click handler rather than calling it? For example, doesn't it make sense to invoke toggle display bio on the line just like this by having a pair of parentheses to actually call the method? Now, if you save this, when you do, the change immediately leads to an error where the maximum call depth is going to be exceeded in the application. So we're exceeding the number of calls that the React engine can handle. This is because when the render function fires, it will now fire toggle display bio right away as soon as it gets to this line, since we're calling the method itself, because we've added the parentheses to invoke the function. But within toggle display bio, we're calling set state. This changes the display bio value. But again, recall that set state triggers the render method once it's done. So after this set state is done, it's going to go back in the render method, and once again, it's going to call toggle display bio once more, which goes back up to the toggle display bio method, which calls set state. Again, this triggers a render. It goes to the toggle display bio, and now we get to this loop of set state and toggle display bio and render method calls. So by giving the onClick handlers only the function name, the React engine under the hood knows that it should invoke the method only when the onClick is fired and not when it's actually crossed in the render method, which is why when you go back to the original code without the parentheses, things will be working just as before. All right, so we now have two very big conclusions from this overall exploration of the React rule of never modifying state. The main one is that you should use set state instead of a direct modification. And the second conclusion is that handlers like onClick should be given function names because of the very fact that set state triggers a render call. Okay, let's move on and explore class properties and initializers, which is a JavaScript syntax which can provide for us a cleaner way to declare the state and add methods to the component. If you enjoy this content, head to davidtkatz.com. There, you'll find links to full courses, as well as to reach out and connect with me. For React and Redux in particular, you'll want to check out udemy.com/React Redux Bootcamp. This is a course I made to help you learn React and Redux the right way, and to turn you into React and Redux developer. Okay, see you in the next one.